It all began on a calm Sunday morning in the quiet suburb of Brookhollow Pines, a place so meticulously groomed and regulated that even the color of your mailbox had to be HOA approved. Melanie Carter, a 32-year-old software engineer and new homeowner, had just moved in 2 months ago, charmed by the peaceful ambience and tidy streets. Her days were simple, spent between work calls and gardening, until the morning when she heard frantic banging on her door. Standing there in a perfectly pressed navy blue HOA blazer was Madison Thorne, a sharp-eyed, tight-lipped woman in her 40s, the newly appointed president of the Homeowners Association. "Do you own a cow?" she asked without greeting. Melanie blinked, confused. "What?" she responded. Madison's voice was flat. "A cow was found wandering down Laurel Drive. We traced it back to your backyard. That's a violation of Ordinance 19C. Melanie tried to protest. She didn't own any cow, had never seen one, and had no clue how it could have entered her yard. But Madison wasn't having it. She handed her a fine notice, a court date, and a formal threat of expulsion from the community if the animal nuisance continued. That evening, as Melanie replayed the absurd encounter in her head, something made her glance at the backyard. There, standing beneath the oak tree, was a large, black cow. But its eyes weren't right. They glowed in amber hue, and it didn't move like a normal animal. When Melanie stepped outside, it turned its head in a disturbingly slow motion and bolted straight through the fence, vanishing without a sound. She reported it immediately, but Madison returned the next morning with a citation for damaging HOA property and negligence involving livestock. Melanie was furious, but more than that, she was scared. Who or what was putting this cow on her property? Over the next few nights, the cow reappeared. Each time, it came closer to her home. Sometimes it would just stare from the woods. Other times, it walked along the street in circles. The final straw came when Melanie woke up at 3:33 a.m. to the sound of hooves inside her house. She ran downstairs, and the cow was standing in her kitchen, dripping black fluid from its mouth onto the tile. When she turned on the light, it was gone. Just black hoof prints remained, burning slowly into the floor. Desperate for help, she went to the HOA office only to find it empty, abandoned. Files were strewn about, papers half-burned in trash cans. A single photograph pinned to the bulletin board caught her eye. It was a 1972 aerial shot of Brookhollow Pines with a circle marked in red over what was now her house. The back of the photo read, "Do not build on cursed ground. Animal sacrifice site. 1939. Before she could process it, the lights flickered and Madison stepped in, locking the door behind her. But she wasn't the stern professional Melanie had known. Her eyes were wide, trembling. She whispered, "They warned us not to develop this land. The old Brook family, they used this place for rituals. The cow? It's not an animal. It's a spirit. It judges the unworthy. You bought the house marked by the blood oath." Melanie was stunned, but Madison pulled out a rusted book from the filing cabinet, a ledger filled with past homeowners who had vanished under strange circumstances. Every one of them fined, penalized, and eventually isolated by the HOA before disappearing. The cow had appeared each time. Madison, who had risen through the HOA ranks, confessed she was forced to continue the practice. The HOA wasn't protecting the neighborhood, it was feeding the entity that lived beneath it. "It needs fear," Madison said. "It needs sacrifice. And it needs a witness to enforce its rules." But Melanie wouldn't be its next victim. As the walls of the HOA office began to groan and crack, and the lights dimmed to a red glow, Melanie grabbed the ledger and ran. That night, the entire neighborhood was filled with the sounds of mooing, not soft, but guttural, angry. Dozens of cows, or entities that looked like them, wandered the streets, banging against garage doors, peering into windows. A neighbor's body was found hanging from a tree the next day, eyes burned out. The HOA issued no statement. Melanie was nowhere to be found. 3 days later, Madison was seen walking door to door, smiling, handing out new copies of the community rules. "Welcome to Brookhollow Pines," she chirped to each resident. "Just remember, keep your lawns short, keep your fences tall, and whatever you do, never let the cow inside." On the last page of the handbook, in small red letters, it read, "Violation of sacred rules will result in visitations." Residents began to report dreams, cows watching them from the foot of their beds, hearing mooing in their vents. The HOA dismissed these as suburban stress. But when another resident disappeared, Madison remained calm. She had found her replacement. And deep in the HOA basement, hidden behind decades of filing cabinets, was a room where the ground was stained red, and a single black cow stood eternally, watching, waiting, feeding. Because in Brookhollow Pines, the HOA didn't just enforce rules, it enforced blood pacts made long before any house was built. And once the cow marked your yard, there was no turning back.